after discussing the upper body muscles, we will now go to the lower body muscles. So with that, we will discuss the gluteal groups. So it is a group of three muscles, the maximus, medius, and minimus. Now, if you look at the most superficial of these muscles, it is the gluteus maximus, which is the largest muscle in the human body and make up the most of the contour of the buttocks. The second layer deep, this would be the gluteus medius, and the last layer would be the gluteus minimus. But we're going to discuss first the gluteus maximus, and it is the main extensor muscle of the hip. The gluteus maximus originates from the posterior surface of the ilium, sacrum, and coccyx, and it slopes across the buttock at a 45-degree angle. The insertion would be at the iliotibial tract and the gluteal tuberosity of the femur, and it functions as the main extensor of the thigh and assists with lateral rotation. So, lateral rotation, yung function, yeah. And okay. The next muscle would be the gluteus medius. So the gluteus medius is a fan shape and lies between the gluteus maximus and the minimus. It is similar in shape and function to the gluteus minimus. It originates from the gluteal surface of the ilium and it inserts into the lateral surface of the greater trochanter. So the last muscle of the gluteal group is the gluteus minimus. It is the deepest and smallest of the superficial gluteal muscles. It is similar in shape and function to the gluteus medius. It originates from the ilium and converges to form a tendon, inserting to the anterior side of the greater trochanter. The function of the gluteus minimus is it adducts and medially rotates the lower limb. So moving on to the next set of muscles are the deep 6 external rotator muscles. So the first muscle would be the piriformis. The piriformis muscle is a key landmark in the gluteal region. It is the most superior of the deep muscles. It originates from the anterior surface of the sacrum. It then travels inferolaterally through the greater sciatic foramen to insert into the greater trochanter of the femur. The actions are lateral rotation and abduction, and it innervates to the nerve to piriformis. So moving on to the next muscle is the gemelle. So it has the superior and inferior. So the gemelle are two narrow and triangular muscles. They are separated by the obturator internus tendon. The superior gemellus muscle originates from the ischial spine and the inferior from the ischial tuberosity. They both attach to the greater trochanter of the femur. Now, what it does is lateral rotation and abduction. Muscle would be the obturator internus. The obturator internus forms the lateral walls of the pelvic cavity. In some texts, the obturator internus and the gemelle muscles are considered as one muscle, the triceps coccyx. It originates from the pubis and ischium at the obturator foramen, and it travels through the lesser sciatic foramen and attaches to the greater trochanter of the femur. The actions include lateral rotation and abduction. The obturator externus muscle is a flat, triangular muscle which covers the outer surface of the anterior wall of the pelvis. It is sometimes considered part of the medial compartment of thigh and sometimes considered part of the gluteal region. The obturator externus is just like the internus. The origin is from the internal surface of obturator membrane and posterior bony margins of obturator foramen, while the medial surface of greater trochanter femur, in common with superior and inferior gemella, is the insertion. The action would be rotates the thigh laterally and also helps adduct the thigh when it is flexed. Moving on is the quadratus femoris. The quadratus femoris is a flat, square-shaped muscle, and it is the most inferior of the deep gluteal muscles, located below the gemeli and obturator internus. It originates from the lateral side of the ischial tuberosity and attaches to the quadrate tuberosity on the intertrochanteric crest. Actions include lateral rotation. So moving on to the next group of muscles is the quadricep muscles. So let's start with the rectus femoris muscle, or this one. So the rectus femoris muscle is one of the 4 quadricep muscles of the human body. The rectus femoris muscle has 2 origins at the anterior iliac spine of the pelvis and the upper margin of the acetabulum. Distally, its fibers end in common insertion tendon, which is also known as the quadriceps tendon, or it is at the tibial tuberosity. Its functions are to flex the thigh at the hip joint and to extend the leg at the knee joint. The next muscle would be the vastus intermedius. It's over here. So it arises from the front and lateral surface of the body of the femur in its upper 2/3, sitting under the rectus femoris muscle and from the lower part of the lateral intermuscular septum. It also attaches to the medial lip of the linea aspera of femur, and the insertion would be the quadriceps tendon to base of patella and onto the tibial tuberosity via the patellar ligament. Next muscle would be the vastus lateralis, over here. So the vastus lateralis, also called the vastus externus, is the largest and most powerful part of the quadriceps femoris, a muscle in the thigh. The origin would be from the greater trochanter over here, and it also attaches to the lateral lip of linea aspera of the femur. So the last muscle of the 4 quadricep muscles would be the vastus medialis. This one. So the vastus medialis is an extensor muscle located medially in the thigh that extends the knee. It also attaches to the medial lip of linea aspera of the femur, and it inserts the quadriceps tendon to base of patella and into tibial tuberosity via the patellar ligament. So let's move on to the sartorius muscle. The sartorius muscle is the longest muscle in the human body. The origin of the sartorius muscle is the anterior superior iliac spine of the pelvic bone, and from there it runs spirally towards the knee region. So it inserts at the pes anserinus medially from the tibial tuberosity, and at the hip it can flex and weakly adduct and laterally rotates the thigh. So let's move on to the hamstring groups. So the hamstring is composed of the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and the biceps femoris. But we will go first with the semimembranosus muscle. So this is the semimembranosus muscle. It is one of the 3 muscles that make up the hamstring. It is found on the back of the thigh and runs from the base of the pelvis to the back of the tibia, one of the bones that make up the lower leg. Now, it arises by a thick tendon from the upper and outer impression on the ischial tuberosity, above and medial to the biceps femoris and semitendinosus. The action includes flexion of the leg at the knee joint. The next muscle would be the semitendinosus, so the pink area. This muscle is one of the 3 hamstring muscles that are located at the back of the thigh. The semitendinosus muscle begins at the inner surface of the base of the pelvis, known as the tuberosity of the ischium, and the sacrotuberous ligament. It inserts at the medial tibial condyle, and the semitendinosus muscle lies between lies between the other two. These three muscles work collectively to flex the knee and extend the hip. The next muscle is the biceps femoris. So it is a composite muscle as the short head of the biceps femoris develops in the flexor compartment of the thigh and is thus innervated by a common fibular branch of the sciatic nerve, while the long head is innervated by the tibial branch of the sciatic nervion. Both heads of the biceps femoris perform knee flexion. Since the long head originates in the pelvis, it is also involved in hip extension. The long head of the biceps femoris is a weaker knee flexor when the hip is extended. So let's move on to the adductor muscles. So the first muscle would be the adductor longus over here. In the human body, the adductor longus is a skeletal muscle located in the thigh, one of the adductor muscles of the hip. Its main function is to adduct the thigh, and it's innervated by the obturator nerve. The adductor longus arises from the superior ramus of the pubis. Distally, the fibers of the adductor longus extend into adductor canal. It is inserted into the middle third of the medial hip of the linea aspera. The next muscle would be the adductor brevis. It's over here as well. So it is a muscle in the thigh situated immediately deep to the pectineus and adductor longus. It can also flex and medially rotate the thigh. The adductor brevis muscle emerges from the body at the inferior ramus of the pubis. It inserts into the pectineal line and the middle of the linea aspera of the femur. So the next muscle would be the pectineus muscle. It is a flat, quadrangular muscle situated at the anterior part of the upper and middle aspect of the thigh. The pectineus muscle arises from the pectineal line of the pubis and to a slight extent from the surface of the pubis and to a slight extent from the surface of the bone in front of it, between the iliopectineal eminence and pubic tubercle, and from the fascia covering the anterior surface of the muscle. The fibers pass downward, backward, and lateral to be inserted into the pectineal line of the femur, which leads from the lesser trochanter of the linea aspera. Next muscle would be the gracilis muscle over here. So the gracilis muscle is the most superficial muscle on the medial side of the thigh. It is thin and flattened, broad above, narrow and tapering below. It originates from the inferior rami of the pubis and the body of the pubis, and it attaches to the medial surface of the tibia between the tendons of the sartorius and the semitendinosus. So the next muscle would be the adductor magnus. It is a large triangular muscle situated on the medial side of the thigh. It consists of two parts. The portion which arises from the ischopubic ramus is called the pubofemoral portion or adductor portion. The next one would be the portion arising from the tuberosity of the ischium is called the ischocondylar portion, extensor portion, or the hamstring portion. It originates at the inferior pubic ramus, the ischial ramus, and the ischial tuberosity, and inserts both at the linea aspera, or the fleshy insertion, and the medial epicondyle. Nobody knows where they might end. So let's move on to the anterior and lateral leg below the knee. The first muscle would be the tibialis anterior. The tibialis anterior is a muscle in humans that originate in the upper two-thirds of the lateral surface of the tibia, and it inserts into the medial cuneiform and first metatarsal bones of the foot. It acts to dorsiflex and invert the foot. The muscle inserts into the base of the first metatarsal bone in the foot, located just behind the big toe, It also inserts to the medial and inferior surfaces of the medial cuneiform tarsal. The tibialis anterior muscle helps with the dorsiflexion, which is the action of pulling the foot toward the shin. Nobody knows where they might end. The next muscle would be the extensor hallucis longus. Get it over here. So the extensor hallucis longus is a thin muscle situated between the tibialis anterior and the extensor digitorum longus. The extensor hallucis longus has its origin at the medial side of the fibula and interosseous membrane. It emerges into a tendon above the superior extensor retinaculum as well. Its insertion is the distal phalanx of the big toe. Here. Nobody knows where they might end. The next muscle is the extensor digitorum longus. It is a pennant muscle situated at the lateral part of the front of the leg. The fibula is the bone on the pinky toe side of the shin, and the extensor digitorum longus originates from the front surface of the top 3/4 of this bone. The extensor digitorum longus muscle originates from the fibula, interosseous membrane, and the lateral condyle of the tibia. Nobody knows where they might end. So let's move on to the peroneus muscles. The peroneal muscles are a group of 3 muscles: the peroneus longus, peroneus brevis, and peroneus tertius. Other may exist. The peroneus longus and brevis muscles lie within the lateral compartment, and the peroneus tertius muscle is located within the anterior compartment of the leg. It inserts at the plantar side of the medial cuneiform and first metatarsal bones. Fibularis brevis muscle, or peroneus brevis muscle, has its origin more distal at the fibula and is covered by the fibularis longus muscle to its most part. Its tendon inserts at the tuberosity of the 5th metatarsal bones. Nobody knows where they might end up. Nobody knows. Suppose you'll never know. So let's move on to the posterior lower leg. And with that, we will start with the flexor digitorum longus. So the flexor digitorum longus is situated on the tibial side of the leg. At its origin, it is thin and pointed, but it gradually increases in size as it descends. This muscle serves to curl the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th toes. Can you curl your toes? Nobody knows where they might end. The next muscle is the tibialis posterior. The tibialis posterior is the most central of all the leg muscles and is located in the deep posterior compartment of the leg. The tendon of the tibialis posterior muscle descends posterior to the medial malleolus and terminates by dividing into plantar. The main portion inserts into the tuberosity of the navicular and the plantar surface of the medial cuneiform. Nobody knows where they might end. The next muscle is the flexor hallucis longus. The flexor hallucis longus is a powerful muscle located on the posterior aspect of the fibula below the deep fascia of the calf. The flexor hallucis longus originates from the distal 2/3 of the posterior surface of fibula and adjacent interosseous membrane. The insertion would be on the base of distal first phalanx. Nobody knows where they might end. The next muscle is the soleus. The soleus is a powerful muscle in the back part of the lower leg. It runs from just below the knee to the heel and is involved in standing and walking. Majority of soleus muscle fibers originates from each side of the anterior aponeurosis, attached to the tibia and fibula. Other fibers originate from the posterior surfaces of the head of the fibula and its upper quarter, as well as the middle third of the medial border of the tibia.
Nobody knows where they might end.
The next muscle is the gastrocnemius. This one. So the gastrocnemius, along with the soleus muscle, forms half of the calf muscle. Its function is plantar flexing of the foot at the ankle joint and flexing the leg at the knee joint. The lateral head originates from the lateral condyle of the femur, while the medial head originates from the medial condyle of the femur.
Nobody knows where they might end up. Nobody knows. Suppose you'll never know.
Let's move on with the foot and ankle motion. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 foot and ankle motions. So the first two would be adduction and abduction. So adduction is when the foot and leg are medially rotated toward the midline of the body. And abduction is when the foot and leg are laterally rotated away from the midline. The next two would be inversion and eversion. Inversion is when the plantar surface of the foot rotates towards the midline. And eversion is when the plantar surface of the foot rotates away from the midline. The next two is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Dorsiflexion is when the dorsum of the foot moves towards the leg. And plantar flexion is when the dorsum of the foot moves away from the leg. And the last two would be pronation and supination. Pronation is the motion of the foot, which is composed of eversion, dorsiflexion, and abduction. With this, the foot is seen to move towards the anterior leg, while the toes and plantar surface moves away from the midline. Supination consists of inversion, plantar flexion, and adduction, resulting in the foot to move away from the anterior leg, with the toes and plantar surface moving towards the midline.
Nobody knows where they might end.
So moving on to the next muscle group is the arches of the foot. The arches of the foot has 3 arches, 2 longitudinal or the medial and lateral arches, and 1 anterior transverse arch. They are formed by the tarsal and metatarsal bones and supported by ligaments and tendons in the foot. So the insertion would be from the navicular, cuneiforms, and cuboid bones and bases of the 2nd, 5th metatarsals. The insertion would be from the middle and distal phalanges of the 4 lateral toes. The tendon goes under the foot from the lateral to the medial surface, thus aiding in support for the transverse arch. The function of the arches allow the foot to support the weight of the body in the erect posture with the least weight. They are categorized as longitudinal and transverse arches.